we record the event, as you know. And now we start with the invited speakers. We will hear the last presentation of the party. He is a research director and head of the culture and creative industries department at the Research Center. I know you should using the hospital from the Department of History and Archaeology and since 1994 she participated in the Academic Direction, which she co-directs since 2014. She has published several books on her and and that is the international delegate in the Conference of Radio Groups and national representative in the strategic working group, social and transformation, the SRI. It is member of the National Federal Safety Council of Culture and History and member of the consultative working group of the Platform for Culture and Creative Industry within the framework of is research director and chair of the Culture and Creative Industry Department of the Academic Research Center. So we would like to welcome the students and faculty online. You can mute your microphone. We will need a few minutes to connect. So the speakers from the second session comes from Greece, Italy, and Czech Republic, and they will present us important presentations on very specific topics concerning research projects and topics related to environment. Okay, we can continue with the next presentation, and we will call back Mr. Clausium. So we will wait for a few minutes. Okay.
Το έκανα. Πείτε μου λίγο τώρα, ακούγομαι. Ωραία. Εντάξει, ευχαριστώ.
Again, thank you for contributing to the conference. And we will be able to share your presentation.
Μπορείτε να δείτε την οθόνη μου?
Yes, we can see your screen is in full mode, in projection mode. We see the first slide. Perfect. Thank you. Θέλετε να πάτε στην προηγούμενη οθόνη, γιατί βλέπουμε και την επόμενη.
Βλέπετε την οθόνη μου τώρα?
Now it's okay.
Okay. But it's not full screen.
No, it's not full screen. Okay.
Now, do you see the full screen now?
Well, we see both slides, so just to go in the previous mode. Θέλετε να πάτε στην προηγούμενη.
Εντάξει, okay. I'm sorry about that, but apparently it doesn't work the full screen. Can you see the slides changing?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. First, I would like to thank the organizers for their kind invitation to participate to this very interesting meeting. I admit that I learned a lot. I was really glad to hear so much about the Delta project, which seems that's very useful tool for the archaeological excavation. Today, I'm going to present to you briefly another project, MyElusis, which aims to unveil the secrets of ancient Eleusis with leading-edge technologies. It is really well known that the Eleusinian mysteries were the oldest and best-known cult in the ancient Mediterranean. People from all the known world at the time, Greek and Roman world, came to Eleusis seeking spiritual comfort and hope for a blessed sacrifice afterlife. For more than 1,000 years, the sanctuary of Demeter and Kore attracted visitors from various ethnic origins and social statuses who proved the cult's immense popularity. Therefore, consequently, MyElusis aims to introduce visitors to the history, mythology, and religious festivals of ancient Eleusis. Taking as a starting point some basic principles, such, for example, that the current digital transformation in archaeological sites and museums, the importance of public archaeology in communicating archaeology and its access to the people, and the employment of digital technologies to make archaeological sites and museums accessible to the public, along with the recent innovations, trends, concerns, practical challenges, and digital solutions that have been adopted or adapted in archaeology. The primary goals of my Lucis project is to increase the visibility and accessibility of the sanctuary of Demeter and Kore, and of course the Museum of Eleusis, and to enhance the experience of the visitor. In order to do that, we develop a number of digital tools, a number of subsystems. I should mention that the project is still in progress. It will be completed after the middle of 2023. And of course, this is a collaborative work that demands various disciplines and expertise. And coordinator of the project is Athena Research Center, but the heart of the project is the F48 of Antiquities of West Attica, where the Eleusis archaeological site belongs. And with their guidance, knowledge, and collaboration, the Athena Research Center and the two companies, Mentor and Site, we all collaborate for the implementation of the tools we want to develop for my Eleusis project. I give you a glimpse of the archaeological site for those who haven't already been and visited the sanctuary. It's a site I think that's worth going and visiting there. So through the My Eleusis project, we want to highlight and present the importance the sanctuary had in antiquity. And we want to do that in order to satisfy modern needs and to employ modern solutions. So we aim to the dissemination of the archaeological knowledge, and of course to make the experience of the visit through the use of ICT technology. The whole project is built through the employment of three pillars. It's before, during, and after the visit. And of course, the project plays an important role for Eleusis being the European capital of culture in 2023. The subsystems that are on development at this point is the repository, which is the base and will will store all the digital sources. My Eleusis Web for the online presentation of the archaeological site, the map, an interactive digital map that will present to the visitor the experience of the procession of to the greater mysteries. The AR, in order to provide to the visitor a view of certain monuments of the site through augmented reality, as they used to be at that time, and for the visit on site of the visitor, outdoors and indoors, meaning the archaeological site and the museum, we employ personal PS storytelling in order to have an alternative way about knowing about the sanctuary and the monuments, gaming applications, games for mobile devices, VM, virtual museum, and SG, an educational app that will present the museum through alternative ways to the visitor. This is the architecture of the system. As we can see, there is digital content that is created. It's stored in the repository, and then through the different subsystems and different ways is distributed to the visitors through different ways. So the first, the base, as we said, of the project is the repository, where we which host text, images, 3D models, objects, monuments, and bibliography. It's our storage which we use in order to take the sources we need for the different digital tools we develop. You see the design, the architecture of the repo, and you take a view of one of the records for the objects. And here we should highlight the point that repo began as a tool for my Lucis project, but it ended being the digital archive of Euphoria itself, and they use it as their inventory for the objects, and therefore it was built in that way. And of course, in the repository, there is material regarding the documentation of different types of work done, and the 3D models of objects and monuments that they are created during the project. As I mentioned, it's a collaborative work. You can take a glimpse of that, and you can see that different people from the different teams participate. Here, for example, you see for the 3D modeling of a vessel. Before and after the visit, as we said, Maya Lucis has 3 pillars: before, during, and after the visit. So as regards before and after the visit, web plays an important role, because this is not just the website of the project, but it aims to be the presentation of the archaeological site, its meaning, and the importance of the century of Demeter and Kore in antiquity. So different type of material is presented there, and important role plays the crowdsourcing material, which through which we already collected a lot of material that is related to the sanctuary in Eleusis, but it's not in the sanctuary itself. So it could be in other collections in museums, it could be in different manuscripts or different photographs or different sources. Continuing with before and after the visit, map will play also an important role. So in the map, an interactive map, of course, in this system, the visitor will get to know the environment of the sanctuary and the environment where the great mysteries took place. So in this interactive map will be the monuments of the sanctuary itself, along with all the monuments across Hieraudos, the procession road that lead from Acropolis to Eleusis. And of course, there are also included monuments of modern Eleusis in order to present a more complete view to the visitor, especially the one who is from a distance. So during the visit, for the visitor who is on site, augmented reality will play an important role. To this subsystem, there was a selection of specific monuments. The selection was done by the archaeological Euphoria in collaboration with the rest of the teams. And here, 3D modeling plays an important role in combination with architectural drawings and, of course, the archaeological knowledge, and takes us to virtual reconstructions. Here we see, for example, the crater Propylia of Eleusis, and this is what the visitor will see on site through mobile devices while the visitor is standing above the ancient ruins. A 3D model of the archaeological site has been created, where the reconstructed through AR monuments will be placed. You see, for example, the east and west triumphal arches. While the visitor is on site, will have the chance to visit the different monuments using storytelling and PS. Here, alternative ways to achieve the presentation of the sites have been chosen. And through storytelling, we achieve historical empathy. And in our case, we decided that it was the best way to present specific aspects of ancient everyday life and for the visitors to learn through play. And in our case, in Maya Luces, PS is meant for families with children. So what we do is to develop a scenario that has to do with a mystery plot. It involves a murder, of course, that takes place in Roman times. And the period was chosen because in this period belong most of the monuments that the visitor see on site. So it's an interactive digital experience that is presented through 5 different characters. It will be available on site through mobile devices. And through this, the visitor will have the experience to learn about the sanctuary through 7 episodes that will take place in 7 monuments on site, and of course, to learn about those monuments. Continuing this visit on site, an alternative way to visit it is the GA system, gaming application system. So here, the visitor will visit the site having as a guide Demeter herself, the goddess. Again, will be available on site through mobile devices. The visitor will be able to see the points of interest on the site, and through quizzes, puzzles, and different type of information, the visitor will learn through play. And of course, different questions and answers will be provided. Being during the visit, but moving from outdoors inside the museum. A serious games application has been chosen. Here, this application will be available on site in a multimedia station in a specific room that will be arranged for the applications of Maya Luces. And here, the 3 gods of Eleusis, Demeter, Persephone, and Pluto, will present to the visitor the founding myth of Eleusis and the different aspects of it. Use of text, narration, pictures, and 3D models are used in this application. So in SG, based on the guidance of the archaeological euphoria, it was built as a space, the museum itself, the current building of the museum. As you can see, it is a little bit dark, and that was chosen by the euphoria because of they thought that the connection of the site with the underworld, and this could be reflected through this dark atmosphere. And of course, the player will be guided by one of the gods that will be chosen and learn from the object that has to collect and pick in order to complete this game. But there are visitors who don't want to play. They want to learn about something in a more traditional way. That way, a virtual museum was created, which will be again available through a multimedia station. And again, the euphoria decided that they wanted the building of this virtual museum to be a copy of the real museum. At this stage, and because the museum is closed for renovation, the decision was to make an exhibition that will actually be the exhibition after the reopening of the museum. However, they will be able to make alternative exhibitions and approaches. And of course, this system will be available for different target groups. At the same time, this subsystem is a tool for curators themselves. The archaeologists of the Euphoria have endless possibilities for thematic and other exhibitions. They already try different ones, and they have the opportunity to use text, images, 3D models, and web links. You get an aspect, of course, the visitor can move around the museum, go as close or far they wish from the objects, and of course they can get information about them. 3D models of certain objects will be also placed within the museum. So this is my Lucis project that aims at a holistic experience for the site and to unveil the secrets of ancient Eleusis with leading edge technologies. And as we said at the beginning, this is a work that is based in close collaboration of many different disciplines and expertise, and we work very close to each other. You see here, not the entire team, but a great part of our team. And as you can see from our faces, we are really happy working on Eleusis. Thank you very much.
In English. Now is available by the American publishers Lockwood Press in Atlanta, Georgia. His most recent book is The Art of Painting in Ancient Greece, published by Cabin Editions in Lockwood Press in 2018, and is also available internationally. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation and your kind introduction. The University of Athens how do I switch this? Oh, okay. So, the University of Athens has recently established a new center of excellence dedicated to the digital humanities under the auspices of the departments of history and archaeology, philology, and informatics. The main aim of this center is to function as a hub with an open philosophy and structure, so that it can facilitate research but also disseminate its results. The center currently focuses on ARCHAEOCOSMOS, a project dedicated to the study of historical geography from prehistory to late antiquity. When you think about ancient geography, then of course Pleiades comes to mind, which is based on the Barrington Atlas. It is indeed a great tool, and we have all used it. But only if you want to look up a particular ancient site. You can retrieve some information about the site in question, and its location appears as a point in a map box. Nevertheless, there are some important limitations in Pleiades, which led us to the decision to start a new project, substantially different in its scope and design. Pleiades focuses mainly on Mediterranean sites dated from the early first millennium BC to late antiquity. The users can only search for a single site or a geographic feature at a time. It is not possible to look up an entire region with its settlements, rivers, and mountains. Pleiades' maps are static, and the users cannot interact with them. Finally, it is not linking the geographic features with the ancient texts and the ancient persons which were related to them. This feature is offered by another excellent and very useful tool, Topos Text, nevertheless, again, with some important restrictions. The currently available geotags stem from the English translations of a limited number of texts, and these tags were created mainly with the help of scripts, which means that the index is not complete. With ARCHAEOCOSMOS, we envision a more integrated approach. We are in the process of creating an app which we hope to be modular, scalable, and also easy for data entry by a large number of users with diverse technological skills. Our aim is to have humans read carefully both the original ancient text, by humans we mean our students, and their English translation, and manually create geotags for a variety of terms. Habitation sites, from a single farmstead to a metropolis, geographic features such as mountains, rivers, lakes, ethnonyms, names of regions, and finally, names of individual persons, both real and mythological, imaginary, or what have you. In its final version, our web application will enable the users to create their own maps by filtering features. By selecting a particular feature, for example, a mountain or a city, they will see all the relevant ancient texts and all the groups of people and individual persons connected to it. By selecting a particular group of people or person, all the relevant geographic features are going to be displayed. Finally, it will also be possible to select a particular text passage and see on the map all relevant locations. We decided to implement our project with ArcGIS Enterprise, which offers a multi-user environment and allows us to create web maps and apps that are being updated on the fly. ARCHAEOCOSMOS lives in this digital life, spread over 5 virtual servers, which are being provided by the National Network of Technology and Research Infrastructures in Greece. Marathon Data Systems kindly offered us invaluable technical support all along the way. Our geographic data is stored in a PostgreSQL geodatabase connected to ArcGIS. At first, we tried to run our entire database with ArcGIS, but eventually we realized that it is impractical when it comes to tables with complex relationships. After a lot of experimentation and trial and error, and wasting a lot of hours, we decided to store only the geographic data in the geodatabase of ArcGIS and keep everything else in a separate PostgreSQL database. The gateway for all our team members is the portal, which grants access to the available data, but also enables everyone to create their own maps and web applications. During the time of the pandemic, when no field activity was possible, we organized an internship in which 150 undergraduate and postgraduate students of the University of Athens participated. The students were able to connect to the portal through their browsers at home and use a web app especially prepared for the data entry. It should be noted that no special software is required, and even very low-tech computers can be and were used. The administrators can monitor the activity of the users and their edits. We are using versioning, thus it is possible to control all edits and even reject them if necessary. We're also using an app to monitor the activity of the users. We have also given our users the opportunity of seeing the total number of their own edits and also the edits of other users, of course without revealing the real names. The idea is to enhance competitiveness in a positive way without offering any material rewards. This has the same effect as the high score in games, and it has indeed proved to be a very strong motivation for the participants. We first focused on creating a map of the Greek cities from the geometric to the end of the classical period, and also index the information included in the inventory of the Greek cities by Mogens Hansen. The next step was to digitize the main rivers in Europe, the Near East and North Africa, and the mountains using data of the European Environment Agency and the UN. Then we integrated into our database the datasets offered by a number of notable projects, the Pleiades, the Digital Atlas of the Roman Empire, the Messenian Atlas Project, and the geographic data for ancient Near Eastern archaeological sites. We enriched the collection of data with many new sites from our dataset. Our database already contains archaeological and geographical information on 40,000 archaeological sites, 700 regions, 1,100 ethnonyms, 25,000 geographic features, such as mountains, lakes, rivers, as well as 30,000 points of interest from the wider Mediterranean region and the Near East. And of course, we are also constantly adding new sites. ARCHAEOCOSMOS currently has one of the largest collections of data on historical geography. At this point, it is worth briefly describing our workflow. The data entry for the geographic features takes place in a simple web app. Our users connect to it through the browsers and gain access only to the batch of data which is being edited at the time. In the picture, you see the app we recently used to digitize the rivers in the Mediterranean. The user sees in red the rivers which have already been edited by him or others, or her. And when they select one of the blue rivers, a pop-up window opens up and they can edit the available information. They can also add new place names. In the case of settlements or monuments, they can also add the periods during which this site existed. We place an emphasis in collecting the place names or the features which were used in various historic periods. We want to record as many names as possible, both in ancient languages and also in a selection of modern languages and the period of they were in use. This will allow us to reconstruct the history not only of the sites themselves, but also of their names. It is also important because many sites had more than one names even during the same period and in the same language, often with variations in orthography. In our opinion, it is important not to try to artificially normalize our data. This would make the work of the database administrator a lot easier, of course, but it would also result in a loss of important information. By recording the variations of place names, we also enable the users of our application to search for sites more easily without having to guess the name and the orthography we think to be the main one for a particular site. We have focused on the accumulation of place names for the available sites in our database, and so far we have added approximately 50,000 new ones. We have included the Pleiades ID whenever available in order to ensure that in the future our data set can be integrated with theirs, but we have also included the Wikidata ID, which allows us to connect our features to all available Wikipedia pages. We will be recording the Wikidata ID for all entries in our database, both geographic features, persons, regions, etc. We think that in terms of long-term compatibility, it is important to use Wikidata IDs, and we encourage you all to do so. ARCHAEOLOGY and Pleiades could stop exist sometime in the future, but we think that Wikipedia has the best chance of continuing to be available in the long run based on its large community of supporters. The Wikidata IDs are going to allow our data to be shared with that community. So far, we have described our workflow for editing geographic features with the web app. As already mentioned, the geodatabase capabilities of ArcGIS have important limitations when it comes to complicated table relationships. Thus, we have developed a separate PostgreSQL database. We're currently developing a simple environment in PHP, which allows the user to connect to both databases in order to retrieve the required information for the feature. The users can select a text, which they will review, and then add geotags for the persons mentioned in the text, and also define the relationship with existing persons in the database. The currently available PHP forms do not look very inviting, at least not yet, but they will do the work. They allow the user to connect with two databases and add information to a plethora of tables with complicated relationships to each other while keeping it very simple. The Wikidata ID is being added to all the features and persons which are being imported into the database. In addition to that, we have also started indexing to the lexica of Greek personal excuse me, the Greek personal names. We have added into the database 34,000 persons, which are included in the volume about the Southern Asia Minor, and geo-reference them to the sites of our database. The web app available for the public offers currently an interactive map with only a fraction of the information in our database because it is still under review. Nevertheless, the visitors can see a map of about 1,100 ancient Greek cities from the geometric to the late classical period, as well as the main mountains and rivers and the main roads. Thus, they can obtain a complete picture of the geography of an area in antiquity. Furthermore, the size of the dot of each city reflects its actual size and importance. Thus, the visitors get an idea of the hierarchy of the settlements. By selecting a feature, a pop-up window appears with some relevant information, including the Wikipedia page, as well as additional tables with the names of the site and the different periods it existed. ARCHAEOLOGY is still at its initial phase, and of course, much needs to be done. Please keep in mind that it is the product of the work of volunteers, and it runs with a budget of €0. Our aim is to create a community of people who are willing to contribute to the project. This is the only way of ensuring its sustainability in the long run. We, Kostas Kopanias and myself, would like to put an emphasis on the word community. As already mentioned, ARCHAEOLOGY is designed as a collaborative program. It is open not only to the members of the University of Athens, but also to everyone who would like to participate in it, use the available hardware and software, as well as the infrastructure and the data set for their own research. It is open to everyone, researchers, PhD, MA, and undergraduate students alike. Since we are using versioning, it is possible for individual users to create their own maps and their own data, keeping them private, not only from the public, but also from the other members of the portal, as long as they remain unpublished. When the principal investigator decides to publish the data, then it will be integrated into the main dataset and also presented to the public, both through the main web app and alternatively also in web apps published on the project webpage of their creator. This is indeed an ambitious project, and any help is welcome. We are optimistic that this project will flourish because of the large number of volunteers among our students and their enthusiasm so far, and it proved particularly important during the periods of lockdown. ARCHAEOCOSMOS has allowed all of us to conduct a virtual field survey, travel in virtual landscapes, and learn a lot about historical geography. So, Kostas Kopanias and myself would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Plachis. Also, we would like to thank Dr. Kopanias for this presentation and for the let us know about this wonderful platform, and we're sure that we will use it. So we can proceed with the next presentation. I would like to welcome Dr. Dimitris Rubiis. Dimitris Rubiis is a researcher archaeologist of CNR ISPC of Basilicata. He's adjunct professor of methodology of the archaeological research of landscape archaeology and of archaeology of Magna Graecia with the University of Basilicata in Italy. He is editor of several publications in the field of classical and of landscape archaeology. His current research is dealing with the study of archaeological methodologies, survey and excavation, and he's carrying on projects aimed to the ancient landscapes reconstruction in South Italy. He currently directs 2 archaeological excavations, a survey in Irakli and Basilicata, and an archaeological mission in Greece, Pandosia in the Acheron River. Also, he's member of the scientific committee of the journal series. So, thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you very much for this kind invitation and presentation. So, well, in Italy, concerning the use of digital systems as suitable tools for the computerized management of field research and archaeological finds, should be noted that the first experiences date back to the 1970s and 1918th century, of course, that the positive results led to the realization of the first international conference held in Lecce in South Italy in 1986. Approximately in the early 1980s, the Central Institute of Catalogue and Documentation, ICCD, of the Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage, now we call it Ministry of Culture, proposed general standards for the compilation of context record forms useful for a structured and controlled cataloging of archaeological sites and finds. In addition, as part of the Cultural Sites project, also sponsored by the Ministry of Culture, in the late 80s, the first experiments on the computerization of ICCD Ministry of Culture record forms were carried out with the application for computer systems, that they call System for the Control Acquisition of Records, of the Pinnacles Consortium as part of the EVIA project. The need to use controlled archaeological vocabularies emerged from this type of activity. It was on the basis of these experiences of that the emergency cataloging project was launched in 92, again coordinated by the ICCD, Ministry of Culture, for the registration and computerization of artifacts at risks of theft in all Italian museums. The program included the use of record forms for several research levels, like archaeological artifacts, find record templates, and so on. And based on the experience of various projects in the Neapolitan area, such as the mentioned Pinnacles Consortium, of auxiliary vocabulary lists, which, however, needed further implementation and continuous testing. Since the 1990, the creation of relation databases and data processing systems interacting with cartographic management platforms functional at several levels of archaeological research have been the objectives of various projects, more or less valid, which are applied with updated versions in various research institutions and Italian universities, such as the examples listed below: University of Bologna, Aladino system, University of Pisa, Nike system, Siena, Arwen, Open Archeo system, Salerno, University of Salerno, SysLat system, and later the W. Odos system. Since then, many things have been done, and still today the Central Institute for Catalogue and Documentation of the Ministry of Culture continues to update and store a multiplicity of digitized data from the various Italian territories subjected to archaeological excavations of various types and chronological periods. This is how we arrived at the CIGEC web system, that is the General Catalogue Information System of the Ministry of Culture, as a centralized web-based system that can be operated remotely, divided in several sections in hierarchical where evidence of human presence referring to different historical periods is catalogued by means of record forms containing information on built structures that are still visible, even if only partially, mobile finds recovered during excavations, prospection or fortuitous discoveries, or preserved in public and private collections. In parallel with this ministerial experience, the postgraduate School of Archaeological Heritage in Matera of the University of Basilicata, as early as in the 1990, in collaboration with CNR, the National Research Council, created a system for recording archaeological data in its excavations, suitable for the systematic documentation of the evidence brought to light, accompanied by a handbook with compilation rules in the wake of similar experiences in inland. In detail, this is a data implementation system that starts from the most general landscape frameworks, like as you see there, landscape areas and landscape units, topographical units, and so on, enriches information regarding individual archaeological sites through the use of specific record forms useful for documenting the archaeological excavation. Thus, the CITO, site settlement, record card was created for general data on the excavation systems. The WESE, stratigraphic unit for the strata and elements, the WESE-M, that is means stratigraphic wall unit for, for the individual structure units of the buildings, the WESR, is a wall covering stratigraphic unit for the wall and floor coverings of the rooms. The CS, the barrier container card for the various construction needs elements of place, sorry, and the DF, the foundry deposition record, context record card for the human histological remains and the associated foundry grave goods. Specific record forms were also created for the post-excavation analysis and study of the artifacts, the TMA, the find record templates, for the cataloging and statistic of multiplied finds, and the RAR, archaeological numismatic finds, and so on, for the analytical study of individual objects. In recent years, the record form system has been the subject of careful analysis during the School of Matera, seminar activities within the framework of the methodology lessons, with revisions, improvements, and subsequent tests carried out by the students during the various field activities. From there, the need was felt to use criteria for compiling records and to improve technical vocabularies with archaeological terminology. However, data integration and dialogue with information technology platforms, especially GIS platforms, was one of the first priorities in Italian universities and research institutes. In Italy, the infinity potential of the use of digital system, as well as the use of GIS platforms, is widely recognized and widely used, as is the case in other research in the Mediterranean, which is growing steadily in various archaeological excavation and landscape archaeology projects. The potential of digital tools for the study of settlement phenomena was, among other things, well highlighted in the first review of archaeological projects carried out by the journal Archeologia Calcolatori and Archaeology Computers since 1990, which at the end of the decade began using digitized archives and GIS platforms. At this point, it is therefore legitimate to state, and the majority of scholars now agree on this, that the computerization of archaeological research at the site and at the territorial level must aim at an advanced and complete management system where alphanumeric data from several levels of research and cartographic data, vectorized and raster, can be exploited not only for archival consultations, but also for thematic map processing. Some projects, like us, go beyond the first levels of data management and processing to deal with more articulate and certainly even more intriguing situations, such as structuring functionalities of areas or fragments expressed in density curves of, for example, farms like the example on the left, or ancient villas on the right, or more complex spatial analysis, including network analysis, buffering, and geostatistical analysis. The main point for the study of territorial settlements in Italy systems, also the most well-spread, is the application of Thyssen theoretical polygon model. Take into account the morphology of the landscape, including physical barriers as well as the greater or lesser size of each settlement, are well present in projects that rely on this process study settlement dynamics and the relationship between the various sites, as in the case of the territories of South Italy in ancient Daunia. The same is also true in the case of Metaponto, Metapontium survey, where recent GS analysis have attempted to highlight the relationship between the various farms of the Metapontine Hora through the weight analysis of pertinence areas modeled according to the configuration of the terrain. And among very interesting aspects, also developed with the framework of a number of territorial projects in South Italy, is a methodological approach of studying the territory through the application of viewshed analysis, that is mean the analysis of interdisability, aimed at studying ancient settlements in relation to the visual control of the neighboring territories. This approach aims to propose and observe visual perception of the surrounding territory. In Basilicata, I mean the ancient Lucania, ancient Lefcania, recently the interdisability analysis carried out on the GIS in Torre di Satriano and in our Bradano area, Torre Santiano on the left, Bradano area, Montescaglioso on the right, has made it possible to study the possible relationship between the various sites from the classical and medieval ages and their role in controlling the surrounding territory and the ancient pathways. A further possibility, offered thanks to computerized data management and analysis carried out in particular the spatial distance analysis module, is to hypothesize the main primary and secondary material procurement areas falling with exploited territory necessary for the life of the settlement. The model realized in Basilicata from us allowed the simulation of the calculations of the cost of displacement in terms of time on different slopes, and thus ultimately the hypothesis of the perimeter of the area of intensive exploitation located around the site. A priority issue concerns the management of access to computerized platforms for archive consultation and data transmission. The resolution to the latter problem necessarily passed through the development of shared systems for the remote cataloging and use of archaeological data, thanks to the use of online platforms for the management of archaeological heritage, cultural resources. With regard to the later, the School of Postgraduate School of Specialization, Terra is implementing the HORA project with the creation of a complete repertoire of archaeological research at a regional level, which can be managed and coordinated through a WebGIS platform aimed at promoting the knowledge, valorization, highlighting, and development of the archaeological heritage in Basilicata from antiquity to the Middle Ages. After you will hear another one for the city of Rome, from Mirella celebrates the CITAR project. However, as emphasized by Ricardo Frankovic years ago, it is essential to promote and develop initiatives aimed at the computer literacy of archaeologists in order to set up systems for the training and the management of archaeological documentation. To this, I would also add the issue of optimizing the digital documentation in the field, which is currently facilitated, as we know, for Delta project by the use of digital systems, which are now quite affordable and widely used in field researches. As we know, the digital skills, photogrammetric and measurement techniques in connection with remote sensing as well as the 3D imaging becomes in recent years always part of the excavation process and not a complementary project of it. As far as visual archaeology is concerned, of course, is the leading tool for interpreting and presenting the results of archaeological research. In Italy, there are now many really many, and some very interesting ones, and also innovating tools, as we will hear later from Gabriele and Emilia. Well, visual archaeology tools and so on, but at the opposite end of the digital spectrum, there is also a parallel world and a different space that aims very much, not only for the general public, but also for the archaeologists, to narrate the chronological phases, the chronological periods by means of technical drawings and creative illustrations of attractive archaeological reconstructions. On the other hand, I think that the area where we should do a lot of work in the near future is the virtual reconstruction of landscapes, following an interdisciplinary approach and interpreting landscape transformations diachronically, not only on the basis of data from the study of artifacts, but also from the study of ecofacts. A final issue concerns the management of access to knowledge in the digital world for archaeology and data sharing. The resolution to this last problem necessarily passes through the development of co-management data systems for the remote cataloging on co-use and exchange of archaeological data. So, in conclusion, the data project is also an absolutely inviting and viable way forward at the European level for distance learning and knowledge in the world of archaeology in the digital age. So, thank you for your attention.
Yes, okay. Okay, so we finished with presentation by Dimitri. So we will continue with the next presentations by the speakers that we invited and are online. So we will have our next speaker is Dr. Peter Dressler. He began his studies in archaeology at Masaryk University, and his master's thesis focused on research into the problems of S-shaped theory. Since 2008, he has been working as an assistant professor, and since 2003 has been part of the research team working at the Great Moravian fortified site at Hanso near Breslau in Czech Republic. He was the principal investigator of the project Economic Background of the Center, or just settlements near the background of the center. It was running from 2012 until 2014, and since 2016 he is an excavation director at the Hanso site. So Dr. Peter Dressler, I don't know if you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you and welcome to the conference. You can start. Thank you.
And my presentation is visible to you?
Yes, yes. We see it.
Okay. So thank you very much for invitation. Hello. Please introduce me, our digital archaeology at early medieval site in Pohansko in Czech Republic. It's it's middle side, in the middle of a river area on the south, the most southeast part of the Czech Republic, and it's excavated since 1959. The site itself has almost 60 hectares, and excavations took part of a quarter of the area. The rest was partly unexcavated. Another part is known by geophysics prospection. Anyway, we can divide excavations or the history of the site on two periods. One is analog times, which started at the beginning and end in the 1994, and is presented by these three peasants, as you can see, František Kalousek, Anna Viňatová, and Bořivoj Dostal, who did the documentation of the site and excavation at the site in a classic way. So it means analog photos, drawings of the situation, description on a paper blocks, etc., etc. At the beginning of year 1995, Jiří Macháček started digitalization of Pohansko, and with his old friend from the schools, now I forget his name, I'm sorry, Kučera, Michal Kučera, they started convert the Pohansko excavations into the digital world. Here is a, you can say, short view how the history of digitization and digital tools was implemented at Pohansko. You can see almost every year in the 90s and the beginning of the new millennia, there were implemented new digital tools and ways to the process of excavations, and of course for the analysis of the site, which belongs to the most important site of early medieval Central Europe. As a university, we are trying to implement and test the new things in digital world. So as it is possible based on the funds and the projects, etc., we are trying to incorporate in our process the new things, but of course sometimes happen, as for example in the year 2008, then we must do some kind of a downgrade or go back and return to a typical and traditional way of documentation, especially in the description of the features, because based on our experience, it's more it's easy to control the stratas and the description of the features and the connections between in the chronology and the stratigraphy, etc., etc. We used a lot of things, but this was the necessary step back. Anyway, we implement of not only the technology but also the students, and as we are at university, the students are very important part of our excavations. We are teaching them, they are bringing new ideas also, and they are trying new technology steps and process, and they after they leave us and abandon the study or leave the study, finish their study, so they are implementing their knowledge into the other institutions and so on. So the first about digitization of archaeology. So this is the diagram how it works at the beginning of new millennia, that we were transforming the drawings into the vectors in some vector or CAD software. Then we digitize the photos, put them into the informations about the photos, put into the databases, all the descriptions of feature, etc. And as we change a little bit the system of vectorization of the drawings, as the times or the methods was changing, and the computers were getting stronger and faster. But anyway, everything is combined and put together into the GIS, as we are, and we are hope that it will work for another years, and we are doing it. So this is just remembering of the past, how we transformed the plans into the vector, the old way of the interface in MicroStation, for example, and this is how we did it, or we are doing this now. I hope that the connection is still good. Please, can you hear me? I'm not sure because is it
Yes.
working? Yeah, okay. Thank you, because I had to get to notice this connection is unstable, so I'm trying to do it as fast as I can. Yeah. Okay, so this is the way how we started to do yeah, I get a memo that I supposed to move the slide first and then talk. Okay, I will adapt. So this is how we change it and how we are doing it still, because we had still a lot of paper documentation to digitize. We have thousands of terrain photos. As you can see, they are put into the digital version. And of course, databases, a lot of databases and tables, as they were working, we are working with them. And artifacts, description of artifacts. And we also think about the storing the data and the protection of the data. So many years ago, we created like a cooperation with some company, created this archive system, but now we are moving to something another. And about the field excavation, digitization of history, as you can saw, the main is basic is using of the geodetic tools, and you can see the students, they are learning how to use the total stations, and of course collecting as much as data and meaningful points as possible. Then taking some auto photos. So this is one specific excavation of the destruction of a rampart. So we used something like a small area. Anyway, we were using large tripods, and of course we are implementing, or we are using now the drones to take auto photos and make also the 3D models using the drones. Yeah, the auto photos are then processed in a GIS, and the vector layers are created. We have a very, you can say, solid data model for our excavation, and sometimes it was used even on other sites if it was possible. This is a bad picture, but as you can see, even when we implemented drones into our excavations with one of our students, Michal Wagner, we were trying immediately to do some 3D models and get some precise data. For example, as you can see, this is the excavations from 2015. And we also were trying to get some informations from features and from 3D models made with cameras on hand. So we are hoping that in the future, we will find some student who will be able to play with this data so much more. And we had some, but she left our studies. Sad for me. Anyway, we are also able to document in this digital way some profiles or cross sections, especially in this case of a large excavation, as for example the destruction of fortification is. Anyway, in this case of small features, we are still like a drawing, make drawings by hand, but it's also the way that we are teaching our students to do the excavations in an old way, because not always they have the possibility to use new techniques, methods, and tools. And this is, for example, as one output in a published article about the combination of geology and archaeology. And as you can see, the profile was created by our colleague Michala Plišťáková, who in very bad conditions and very narrow trench, she was able to make this profile of this geologic trench and include also the data from C14 and other methods. We are trying to, or we are in last few years we are working with or make a documentation in a 3D mostly or very frequently, especially in such a interesting condition as you can see. This is, for example, the excavation of the riverbed, where we found some activities, some constructions into the from the late 9th century, and we used these 3D methods during the excavations. This excavation, for example, was made by, only in 2 peoples, me and my colleague Michala Plišťáková. So we spent the first first COVID lockdown on an excavation, this small trench, and we did everything by ourselves, and we were able then to put all 3D photos into this group. This is just a static representation of very complicated situation. There are some stakes, vertical skews, fallen constructions, but we can still, when we are analyzing it, you can really easily imagine this situation when we are using some 3D tools to visualize this situation. And when we did excavation of fortification, for example, this is the reason why we are implementing this digital tools and techniques into excavations, because we are able to do the documentation very quickly in very precise level, and we can do we can get a lot of informations which are the most important from during the excavations and then during the analysis. And for example, we can here we can see the cross section of the destruction of the rampart, and we are able then to put all the layers together and very quickly visualize this destruction. There is a stone front wall and burnt wooden back wall, and in a working process during the analysis we can separate the stuff. So this is the situation at Pohansko. We are really trying to use everything. We are experimenting. We are trying to work precisely, effectively, and put everything into the digital way to be able to work on information from Pohansko anywhere anywhere, not only in our offices, as we experienced during the lockdown. It was very easy for us then, of course, work even at home with all the data and prepare the articles and think about the stuff. This is just the view, or the final view of data and vectors from Pohansko, from excavations. As you can see, there's a lot of features, there's a lot of graves, and the site is too big, so this is the only way how we can incorporate the data. Was not talking about the gigabytes of geophysics, a lot of information from geochemistry analysis, from some probing we did during the years. We did a lot of field prospection in the hinterland of the site, so we have a really big bulk of data in our archive, and we are incorporating these informations with another sites and comparing the informations, and we can, of course, make a really fast analysis of the site. So there are some links to our fun pages or info pages. I must say that we also tried to do some web maps about Pohansko, but we, some areas are not yet well prepared for publishing. So it was just also some kind of experiment. Anyway, this is also the future to show the data to be open to scientific or the whole world. So, but we are limited by some, of course, especially we are limited by funds or the people or the human resources, and we are also still doing excavations based on the funds and projects we still have, and we hope that we will have. So this is all about the digital Pohansko and digital excavations in Pohansko. Of course, we do during the times we sometimes, or maybe twice we lost some data, but only it was just a matter of a few hours of the work, but the most of the data are preserved, most of the data are safe, and we are working on it. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dressler, for the presentation and providing some info from how the text handled and what is by the digital data in the excavation of Pohansko. Thank you very much for the presentation and please here with us. So we continue. We would like to welcome here our next presenter. So we will have two presenters following the more presentation. So we start with the presentation about the project CITAR. It will be presented by Dr. ARCHAEOLOGY Andrea. To say a few words before starting. So ARCHAEOLOGY has a wide-ranging expertise in data management for cultural heritage. He has worked for more than 20 years for archaeological and conservation projects all around Italy and the Mediterranean area. He is data manager of the Herculaneum Conservation Project. He was part of the Gedi Conservation Institute, the Regia Conservation in Tunisia. He's an international capacity building provider of World Heritage impact assessments and data management processes for Arab Regional Center for World Heritage, ICC Rome, and Gedi Conservation. Within the CITAR project, he is in charge of data maintenance and coordination of system implementation activities. So I would like to welcome you, Ascanio. Hope you will hear us.
Thank you. I hope you can hear you can see the screen.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, fine, thank you. So good evening to all, and I would like really to thank you for this kind of invitation and this really interesting workshop. And continue to, I will speak today on behalf of a large team, as you can imagine, starting from our director, Mirella Lorenzi, and all the archaeologists that daily fight with the archaeological issues related to the ancient city of Rome. So really want to thank you all these people. CITAR project is a very long project. He started from 2007 until now. That was the birthday of our 15th birthday. And I just want to highlight two main key moments during all these years. That was in 2009, during the really starting the project of the implementation of raw archives of the Soviet entities. In 2009, really a lot of archaeologists started the digitization of all the archives of the Soviet tendency. And the second very important moment was in between 2017 and 19, in which a new refactory of the entire platform was put in place in order to exchange and to put new services here, mainly focused on open data. This is really in brief all the history. Obviously, all these years years, and I try I really want to put this slide and this point because it's something similar in what we have learned this morning, learning about Delta project. So all these years becomes for a full generation of archaeologists from a really live learning school because it creates a really awareness on the importance of documentation, digitalization, digital tools, and all the issues related that we already learned this morning. The main project goals can be summarized as follow, starting from to overcome years of delay in standardization process. We already learned how long was the process in terms of standards and normalization of archaeological data. To simplify, also from a management and administrative point of view, the framework inside the superintendency deal with the data management, and also to build a flexible and dynamic tool that can be expanded and modified. It's always be a long-term purposes and a long-term project. And also to take advantages of previous experience within all the reality in Italy, and to provide new tools in order to better inform and influence responsible urban and landscape planning, because we are dealing with the entire, not only the urban landscape, but also all around the city of Rome. And also to offer an online open data WebGIS, as I mentioned during last years, in order to share all the knowledge that we were able to acquire. Obviously, all these kind of job can be done only with a very strong network of academic and non-academic institutions. And we try to share and spread our experience all around Europe during all these years. It's just to focus on and pay the attention on which important is to share the experiences and to share the knowledge that we acquire. Just mentioning some numbers about the project, we are at this stage, and you can see on the graph on the top left how the distribution of the data entries during the years. At this moment, we have more than 6,000 archaeological interventions. This means from archives, but also from documentation coming from professional and the daily intervention of archaeological works. And that means that was split in more than 19,000 of archaeological feeders, and also the acquisition of more than 47,000 of digital documents. This means maps, reports, images, etc., etc. If we look at the distribution, how this data implementation of the database was done during this year, you can see that it's not so homogeneous. We will not be able to, we are not able to start from a logic point of view, because we are focused mainly on accessing the archives. So the distribution of data around the city, we try to keep it homogeneous, but it's very depending on the possibility of accessing to the archives. In this video, try to summarize these kind of issues during these years. When we talk with archives, we started from very raw data, as you mentioned before in other projects. So from paper version of these maps, forms, reports, etc. So scanning, vectorization, digitalization, putting inside the database. This was and this is the hard work. But this produced also a really, as I mentioned before, a great awareness about the importance of standardization, and bring us to create, and it was incorporated in the legal framework of the superintendency, some guidelines for archaeological intervention. These guidelines are distributed to the archaeologists that can follow all the process, and so we can acquire documentation in a very standardized way, starting from last year's until now and in the future. This kind of acquisition and data acquisition also create awareness on the evolution of urban cities. Just analyzing the numbers of archaeological intervention all around the city, we are able to build some kind of graphs like this one. The highlights the edge of this blue line just demonstrate how during the intervention all from 16th century until now is focused exactly when the major intervention inside the urban inside Rome was the deal. About the cost, it could be, I just put this slide just to highlight one main topic, that is As you can see, the project was funded by public funds until the beginning, and it was distributed all along these years. But what I want to underline that is the majority of the cost was dedicated to the people, to the archaeologists that do the works, that make the scanning, go to the archive, analyze the documentation, put the information inside the GIS. So more than 60% of the cost of the project is dedicated to the archaeologists that work inside the project. So I just want to give you, because we don't have so much time and you can experience yourself, just an overview of the platform. Just a brief information. This new platform, as you can see, I don't want to go deeply inside all the technical, specific technical details of the platform, but just to highlight how the server part, so all that you can see on the right side of the slide, this means all the REST API, all the file server, the Elasticsearch engine, the geo server are very enhanced, and this creates a really dynamic platform, scalability, and that allows us to have a real great tool to scale our server resources depending on users' needs. On the left side, you can see how the users interact with this kind of platform, server platform, towards the WebGIS application that we will see in the next slide. All this kind of infrastructure, technological infrastructure, was made thanks to our partner, that is in the Italian Network for Scientific Research. It's GAR, that is the network for research in Italy, but also in Europe, that allow us to create a very complex server farms and guarantee a very good line for interaction and exchanging of data. Just few words about the data model of the entire platform that could be interesting for you to follow how we deal with this kind of dishomogeneous documentation all around the centuries, all around the world. The main information that comes from the archives is called origin of information, and from here all the documentation and the analysis of the archaeological data will be transformed into archaeological partition. Archaeological partition means that archaeological features could be divided from a functional point of view or a chronological point of view. This is the main parts in which the database was divided. So from when we can recognize chronology, or when we can recognize functions of the features that we put inside the database. There are other part of the database, that means the archaeological unit, that is dedicated to the interpretative features. It means if we are able to reconstruct some monuments, some main buildings like temples or stadiums, etc. And a fourth part that is very important from an administrative point of view, that is the law constraints for protection, is what is called vincoli, that is which are the area protected by law. So I just want to go live, and if the line allows us to, I hope you can see the screen. Yeah. From the website, you can directly access the platform, and here you can see the features that is loading. So it's a very simple interface in which you can without authentication, you can do some things, for example, changing the base maps, for example, here, or just connecting just switching between the different layers that we provide has a key legend, no? So starting from the CETA data, that means all the archaeological features, or you can see the features as I said, from a chronological point of view or functional point of view. In this kind, for example, the public buildings or the funerary areas, or the roads and the streets. Or you can switch also, we are able to collect also historical maps, like joining different projects. For example, in this case, the Standard University project for the Pianta of Dernolli. So we can just highlight this and go, and overlap our feeders in order to make some analysis and some investigation and to deal with this kind of information. Or the Forma Urbis Lanciani, that is the great maps of Rome from Lanciani. There are different layers and you can interact with these. I don't want to spend much time. You can search for feeders from this kind of toolbox, or you can interact directly from the map, just going through the layers. Just switching the cartography, sorry. Okay, just going here and you can see the map. Okay, and you can open your forms, read all the documentation. One thing that you are not allowed without authentication is to download the documentation, but it's simply, and you can see here, if you are authenticated, it's a simple registration of the user, you're able to directly download all the information related to this particular excavation. So in this case, I just click here and it downloads all the documentation related to this. Okay. And this is what we provide as an open data services. Another way to interact as an open data services is just to choose your area of interest and just to click here and choose your format, for example, the shapefile, and you can just export the layer from here. And here you have your shapefile that you can import inside your own GIS in order to make some kind of analysis. Another important tool that we provide is the digital library that is very powerful search engine. For example, we can search for tombs in this case, and it immediately gives to you the selection. The important thing is that this digital library is based on the Elastic search engine. This means that I can make mistakes typing my terms. For example, I can type trombe, that is a completely different words, but you can find the same what is related to funerary things. And you can go to the map, reading the documentation, or you can choose which kind of the different partition or origin information you want to see. You can also, the search engine search also inside the reports, inside the images, so you can choose the same criteria inside the attachments to the documentation. It makes the OCR process to the documents, so you can find if your words is inside the map, for example, or something like an annotation, it can be searched and provided in this kind of tool. So it's just to very brief information. You can find a lot of information, a lot of tutorials, and all the open data services inside the website. One thing that we want to highlight and we ask to ourselves is who are using CITAR, who uses the platform. This is very important because from 2020 we start the new website providing all new this kind of the services. So all the open data services, API, WMS GeoServices through the GeoServers platform, the guidelines, the API description in order to attach our data to your own platforms, and the WebGIS services. And when we start the project for the open data services, we noticed a very increase of users. And it was in 2019 that between 2011 and 2019, the user remains approximately the same. From this here, when we provide this kind of tools, the user start to grow and continuing to grow. So just some information about how the user interacts. This is for the website. So we have a lot of returning visitors that want to interact, to understand better, to keep documentation, to have more information about the project. Users are international, but also coming from outside in order to know, to get and to download archaeological information about rooms. And we also ask how we are also able to understand how do visitors reach the website, so with direct links, with our social campaign, etc. And which are the main visit section of the site, so we can deal what we can download. As you can see, the main section are the open data services and the WebGIS. So this is the main part of the project that people are interested in. And from the WebGIS, the platform itself, we have also in this case a lot of returning visitors, more than 70%, and also in this case national and international visitors. And one important thing that we are really proud of this is the how and for how long the visitors interact with the system. And more than 130 minutes, people stays inside the platform, going through the maps, going to the data and searching for the information. This is very important because it means that the platform is robust, that data are very strong, enough strong to keep people attached to the platform in order to interact with it. And not only users, in the last year, CITA also developed an open source project for the code in which was built the platform, and we can expand we can export, we can clone our platform to other two projects in Italy, in Siena and in Verona. So it's simply refactory of the platform, just transferring to other urban archaeological projects. This was very important because it was one of the main goals from the beginning of the project, in order to create a very powerful tool that could be reapplied in other contexts. And just thinking in a long-term way, as we have seen, the CITA is mostly made of data, the IT components, and the users that interact. This means that this kind of system, the three-pillar system, like UNESCO 1, for example, is based that you have all your efforts must be dedicated to keep all the pillars standing at the same time. So, for example, if you have no funds or you're not able to update your IT components, the entire system can collapse because the user cannot interact with the data becomes older, etc. So we always try, and all the team is organized in order to keep all the pillars standing all together in order to provide a very robust platform. And the next steps, so in the short terms, we are dealing with methods and tools for archaeological impact assessment in support of rescue archaeologists, providing, and this will come in the next few months, the implementation of the system, not from the project inside, from the guys and the archaeologists inside the project, but from outside. So directly professional in the field can fill the database and put the data inside the system. This is a very big switch because it means that data will never die, because archaeology will continue and people will interact and will implement the system in the future. In the short middle term, CITA is dealing with support of the PNRR, so the European Recovery Plan, in order to provide some practical tool for rescue archaeology. And in the long term, we are making some experiments, and we are in a good place here to provide a 3D visualization for the entire archaeological urban landscape of Rome, in terms of not only archaeological features, but also of archaeological buildings and historical buildings of the city, in order to provide a very powerful and critical tool to understand the development of the entire ancient city of Rome. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thank you very much. The presentation was very interesting, so to understand how the information to provide access. So let's move on with the last presentation online. I would like to welcome Dr. Gabriele Gaviria. He's an associate professor in archaeological methods and theory at the University of Pisa. He leads the MAPA lab, which manages the MOD, MAPA Open Data, the Italian repository for open archaeological data. His medieval and post-medieval approach devoted to digital application in archaeology. He is member of the Scientific Committee of the Computer Applications and Quantitative Methods in Archaeology, the CAM Association. He has been the coordinator of the archiving project from 2016 to 2019. It's an Horizon 2020 project, and she's still this project is being developed by the MAPA lab. Hello, Gabriele. I don't know if you can hear us.
Hello very much. Hello, thank you very much for inviting me. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I move a little bit your attention from all this interesting digital application to artificial intelligence in archaeology. As said before, I work at the MAPA lab which is a research unit from the University of Pisa, Department of Civilization and Form of Knowledge. And we develop application for archaeological urban areas and also in big data and artificial intelligence. So I will talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, which is a buzzword in the last 10 years. We hear this word a lot of time. Anyway, the word and also the discipline of artificial intelligence predates the internet because it started in the 1950s, and it is a way for mimic the human brain. Then in the 1980s, artificial intelligence developed in what is called machine learning. That is for making you understand easily the way in which the anti-spam system of your emails work. So it's a way through which the computer is able to understand the probabilities. But in the last 10 years, starting from the 10th of this millennium, the artificial intelligence developed a new way for mimic the human brain that is called the deep learning. Deep learning is a way for making the computer understand something. Anyway, for working with artificial intelligence, we need a big amount of data. So we have to move a little bit into what is called the big data paradigm. That means mainly having high volume of data with high velocity and high variety. We know that this can be a problem in cultural heritage and in archaeology especially, because what we think as a high amount of data is not enough for artificial intelligence. So when we speak about having thousands of data, that for us is interesting and meaningful, is not so useful for artificial intelligence. This is one of the problems of using artificial intelligence application in archaeology that we will see later in this short presentation. Anyway, archaeology start working with artificial intelligence from the beginning of the of this millennium. For example, it was used for a predictive model in Brandenburg for understanding the possible location of archaeological sites, but it's also used for discovering archaeological sites and features using satellite images. For example, in the image on the top left, you can see a project that used artificial intelligence for finding Iron Age tombs in Eurasian steppe. Anyway, other approaches to artificial intelligence were used in landscape archaeology. For example, using both satellite images and hyperspectral or multispectral images. There are two examples here. One of these, the one on the right, is related to Karnak funeral structure in France that were detected using artificial intelligence applied to LiDAR data. Anyway, artificial intelligence is also used for supervised learning approaches and for the automatic classification of features, for example, 3D architectural components. In the example here, in a temple or in a building facade, the artificial intelligence is able to classify the different elements, such as, for example, columns or architrave or frieze or cornice, and also to make semantic annotation of this. But artificial intelligence is also being applied to humans' remains. This is an example that used the CT scans of skulls for training the algorithm in understanding the gender, the sex of individual on the base of a 3D skulls. Other applications were in the area of robotics, both for using drones or underwater drones or in the museum, but also with pottery. For example, artificial intelligence has been used in a set of ostraca for reconstructing the ostraca themselves, but also for reconstructing the written part that was on this ostraca. Another system used a new way of natural language processing to epigraph data. We all know that in many cases, data coming from epigraph are incomplete and are very difficult to read. For example, in this case, a neural network was developed for reconstructing the text in order to also define the words that are missing. But in the field of pottery, artificial intelligence has been also used for the so-called puzzle solving. That is the automatic virtual reconstruction of fragment based in some case on 3D models, as in the case on the bottom left, or using images, which means through decoration. This kind of technique are very interesting, but till now there is a lot of work to do for achieving good results in this field. Anyway, as we have seen, artificial intelligence has been applied to various areas of archaeology, and we have seen for the detection of archaeological sites, the recognition and reassembly of archaeological pottery, recomposition of text, and so on. In any case, in general, we can say that archaeology can benefit of artificial intelligence application when a vast amount of data have to be analyzed, and when complicated, subjective, and time-consuming activity are required. For example, when we have to make finding recognition. In all these cases, automation is a great a great help for ourselves. So that was the premises for introducing to a project that our lab, together with other universities, the University of Cologne, Barcelona, York, Tel Aviv, and the CNR in Pisa, together with two Spanish archaeological small and medium enterprise and an Italian ICT enterprise, developed in H2020 project during the period from 2016 to 2019. The goal of the project was to demonstrate that it was possible to create an automatic system able to recognize potsherd by taking a single photo using a mobile device. So at the end of the project, we were able to create a proof of concept that was able to demonstrate that the system we developed can work, even if some improvement are needed. So the general idea is to follow the workflow that archaeologists always follow when they made the recognition of pottery. This means using two different aspects, the decoration or the profile, which means the shape of a vessel. And so we developed two different neural networks, one for recognition, one for decoration, and one for the shape, in order to be able to recognize different types of pottery. At the end of the process, the algorithm gave 5 different answers, 5 different results that can be checked by the archaeologist, going through the archaeological database that is inside the application. The system is for being used through mobile devices, but it can also be used through a desktop application, a desktop version of the system. We used mainly 2 different types of pottery. One that is the maiolica from Montelupo for decoration, and the other that is terra sigillata from Italy, Spain, and France for shape recognition. And so when we start working with 2 different systems, the first question was about data availability. So when we start thinking of having enough data, they weren't enough. So we spent a lot of time going through different warehouses throughout Europe for taking images for training the algorithm. For appearance-based recognition, at the end, we collected more than 10,000 images, but they weren't enough. We take 10,000 images for 83 different types of decoration, but they weren't enough. So we have to use a pre-trained neural network, and also to make data augmentation in order to create, starting from the 10,000 images at the beginning, more than 100,000 images for training the algorithm. At the end, after 3 different stages of validation, we reached a level of accuracy of 83%. Anyway, when working with shape-based recognition, the problem was even bigger, because we have to move from a drawing of the profile to the image of the profile. And so after some attempt to work with image, we decided that we haven't enough data for training the algorithm. So we start using syntactic data, and we extract automatically the profile from the drawings from catalogs, and we create automatically 3D models from the 2D drawings. In this way, we broke them synthetically and we start training the algorithm. But this way was too computationally expensive. And so we move to a new system that worked in a different way, and that create from the 3D model a 2D point line of the profile. And this way was more useful and permitted to train the algorithm with thousands and thousands of data. At the end of this process, we reached the 62% of accuracy in this algorithm. That is not the best result ever, but is a good result for improving the algorithm. So how it works, the application, you can download it freely from the Google Store or the iOS Store, and then you install, and you can check for the shape recognition, take a picture from your gallery or directly from your application, and then you have to scale the image in order to make the algorithm understand the right dimension of the shape itself. And then you have to trace with your finger the profile, the outer and the inner profile. And then you send this profile to the classifier, then that gives you 5 different answers that you can check, seeing all the information and all the data into the database. The same way is for the decoration, apart of the fact that you have not to scale the image or to trace any profile, and you have always the 5 different results. So together with all the artificial intelligence neural network, you have also a database with all the information, with also geographical information about the origins and the course of each pottery types, but also the 3D models that can be freely navigate into the website. All the data collected by the ARCHAEOLOGY project are open data in the ARCHAEOLOGY portal at the ARCHAEOLOGY data service. So you can find all the data collected and all the 3D models of the pottery types we create. You can download them and you can reuse them easily. So few challenges we deal with are, as I said before, the necessity of having enough data. and we know data are never enough in cultural heritage or in archaeology. So the more digital data are open, the more we are able to create artificial intelligence application. As we have said, we have to deal with technical challenges, as in the case of creating 3D models and using synthetic data, but also we have to deal with questions related to transparency. So we decided to distribute our, to release our neural network as open source in our GitHub in order to make everyone understand how it works. But you know, only ICT and artificial intelligence specialists are able to understand a neural network. So this attempt to have transparency is not a real attempt for archaeologists. We have to improve this aspect in order to make archaeologists more aware of how the artificial intelligence application works. And at the end, the next step of our system, we are now working for improving the algorithm. We are working for migrating the algorithm into a new system, because system we use now is an old one, and in 3 years everything changes in the artificial intelligence field. So we are now migrating our network to another system, and we are now working with other colleagues for adding new data and new pottery classes in our system. So we have added the Python Maiolica archaica that is already in the database, and we are now training the neural network, and we are now working with colleagues that work with Iron Age pottery from Turkey to also populate the database with their data, and also train the network with these new classes. Sorry for the delay, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Catania. Thanks very much for the presentation. Very interesting what we heard so far. We knew about the VR technologies, now artificial intelligence, also as a new technology. So thank you very much. And the next presentation will be a video that was prepared by Dr. Hanna Kubelkova from the Masaryk University. Thank you very much for staying up to here, up to now. Hanna Kubelkova received her master's degree at Masaryk University. She's continuing her PhD studies at the same university. Her PhD is focused mainly on study of ash layers at an Neolithic site in Turkmenistan. In 2019, she started work in the project lead that is also national research in infrastructure focused on digital humanities. In 2021, Petr, Patka, and Hanna ran a small project on data management in archaeology that resulted in an open access workshop. So finally, we have this video by Hanna, and we are closing our conference. So we can hear it.
Dear organizers, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me and being able to have my contribution at this conference. I would like to talk to you today about a very important part of digital transformation of archaeology, which is archiving of archaeological data. The main topic of my presentation is consideration of longevity. We as researchers today take for granted sort of that we can use past research as available data sets for us to use for critique, to further our studies as a base data sets for our further research projects. But the same thing is to be expected of our own research that we do today, that our colleagues may want to use this in the near future, but also in the far future. And to make sure that the data we create is accessible and readable in the long term, that is why we are talking about archaeological data, archiving of archaeological data. Excuse me. So what is exactly data archiving in general? So it is different than what most of us might be doing, which is data backup. If you use data backup, you store your data on multiple devices, which may or may not work for a very long time, let's say decades. And there is no mechanisms to explore whether there's integrity to the data stored there and whether it is the very last versions of the data you might have created. Data archiving, on the other hand, is if a system where you store the data has inside of it protocols that allow for long-term preservation or retention, as you can see here. That means that even if the software develops and becomes different, that there are a number of formats that the system the data is stored in is keeping readable and accessible even in newer forms of software. Once you archive the data in the system, the information itself has to stay accessible. So even in 2 years, 10, 15 years, somebody wants to access it, they still can. And the system protects its integrity. That is that whatever you stored in the system should and must really stay the same as it was. No data, even upon migration to newer formats, so that in the new system or new software, the data is still readable. No inherent information should or can be lost. So if we want to talk about data archivation, there are really two large areas that we need to make sure are clear. One is what the information or data is, and the other one is how does it relate to one another. I will be talking about this in more detail, but first let's talk about important underlying assumptions I have when I talk about archaeological data. So if I talk about it, I assume that it is heterogeneous in nature. It is very different in the formats, in the areas I discuss. It could be more towards the humanities sciences, or it could be more towards natural sciences, or in a mix in between. Archaeological data is highly contextualized, so I do need to know a lot more about the artifact or material I talk about, I discuss, I have in my data to have the full picture, full clear picture. And the context itself is also very important. Archaeological data may be of interest to scientists from various fields of study. So what I create is not necessarily available to reuse for archaeologists only, but it could be also other fields of study, or even game developers, teachers, various other options. And this is what I need to have in mind when giving rights of access to it or licenses, and also when I describe what is inside and how much information I give to the user upon publishing the data. Archaeological data in itself or in its nature, is reusable. It's what I talked about in the very beginning. We expect to be able to use someone else's data published, either in form of a publication or as a data set, and we should expect the same to be done with the data we ourselves as researchers create right now. The data may also include confidential information. That is personal information is what we would first think of when saying confidential information, but also probably in some cases it would be the exact coordinates of a site if it's in danger of destruction or looting, for example. So there could be a number of things that might be confidential in what we are describing in our data set. And this also is something that we need to consider. Now, the data that we create and subsequently archive should follow the FAIR data principles. You might have heard about it, that the data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Findable means that in one way or the other, it could be only the metadata, but also the data itself that I, as a researcher, I publish it, and there is a unique and persistent identifier that allows me to find it every time I need it. And it is clearly tied to the dataset. It is accessible, meaning not only to me as a human user, but also to machines or softwares that might allow other researchers to use my dataset in combinations with other to have a big data analysis, for example. It is interoperable. That means that what I use for descriptions, for example, in my metadata description, that if possible, I do use controlled vocabularies that are published somewhere, also follow FAIR principles. But also these controlled vocabularies allow for me to keep my language transparent and understandable to a larger audience. I can also, the interoperable means that the software that I created data with is not something that prohibits others to use it if they do not have a correct license, for example. Reusable is, again, we've talked about it multiple times, but for me, what sticks out the most, and we've had some quite trouble with, for example, are the licenses. So if your data should be reusable, it has to be clear to the end user, be it human or machine, how it can be reused. So you need to specify clearly whether it is very open to reuse or you restrict some ways of reusing it, may be commercial reuse or others. And these are usually stated in licenses. All of these are also very important for the future archivation. What archivation in general or preservation of your data is described also in data management plan that discusses how you want to go about managing the data that you are creating, and what are the workflow mechanisms that others can rely on, how you work with it, where you publish it, and how you archive it. We are using public funding to do our science, and that implies public responsibility. That is why we should also think about how we deal with the research data, and archiving is an important part of it. So what does the data management plan entail? So we know it talks a little bit about archivation, but it does explicitly talk about other areas of data management. So it is, for one, organizational information, that is what roles people have in the project and in the future who takes care about specific areas of data management. So who is the responsible person? It also talks about reusing and creating and collecting data. So again, you explicitly state how you go about these two areas. And please make sure that the preserving data and archivation that is a part of it is here as the fourth part and not as the very last one, as it oftentimes is in real life when we talk about project management. So here at this very point, when we know what sort of data we are using or creating, at this point, we discuss how we are going to preserve them and perhaps archive them too. Then we go on to how we work with the data. And the very last part here is giving access to the data. So when I talk here about the archivation and what in general it entails, does it mean that we need to fend for ourselves? No, it does not. There is a number of obstacles and challenges that might be too much for a single project, but there are larger structures that are here to help. So in Europe, you have these options. You can either store your data in archives or repositories, or you can create your own archive or repository or a platform that can be tied to larger infrastructures. So for example, if you're British, you can use the Archaeological Data Service, where you are free to archive your data in. There is a very nice list of what sort of formats are acceptable for them to archive in the long term. And this list is also available for others when they are designing their research project to know how to collect the data if they're creating new ones. Or there is the Dutch Data Archiving and Network Services or Swedish National Data Service. These are all repositories or archives where you can store your data. Then there are infrastructures that usually work either as creators of their own software or applications that one can use as a help, or for example, controlled vocabularies. And also you can they have a aggregation portal that allows for local or institutional archives, repositories, platforms to be indexed in them, and other researchers can find specific data sets within this. So in Czech Republic, for example, we have Archaeological Information System that is both an infrastructure and has its own repository. And at the European level, we have a number of archaeological infrastructures. There is Ariadne, Europeana Parthenos, or Dariach, which is, for example, Linda Klariak, the project I am a part of, is a part of Dariach infrastructure. And these are the European level. And on top of them, there will be in a very near future also the shop marketplace that is supposed to work as a meta aggregation portal that will collect all of these in one place and allow the user to log in and create linked data. So if I would be looking, for example, for lithics, I can find it there as a publication data set, etc. And in those specific cases where they relate very clearly relate to one another, I can create a link so that the next person looking for this will already find a small network of related data sets or other sources. However, the important thing here is that if you use an archive for archivation of your data, it is the archive's job to make sure that there is long-term preservation software in there, that they do take care of the data long-term. And you deposit your data there and you don't have to think about it afterwards anymore. With the infrastructures, if you index your own data set or platform or repository there, then the burden of taking care of your data long-term is on you. There are also ongoing activities in this area because archiving of archaeological data is not yet fully standardized. There's a number of things that we are still dealing with, be it the formats that are good for archivation, for example, in 3D objects, etc. So it is a developing area. At this moment, there is the European Cost Action Saving European Archaeology from the Digital Dark Age. I believe you've all heard from this, and one of the working groups is exactly doing this. It's talking about planning for archiving. So if you're interested more in this topic, make sure to look into this also. So I've talked in general about archivation or archiving of archaeological data. But there's no clear help. And at this moment, there are some very general best practices that we can do. First, create data management plan. Know what you have, know how it relates, how the data relates to one another. And also have it somewhere written, keep it live, keep it up to date. If available or possible for you, use open source software and format. That is so that in the future, if the specific company that you use its software or format specific would stop working, so that your data is still accessible and readable in some form, that there are migration strategies for it to be used long term. Please create a documentation of your data set. It is very similar to data management plan. If you have a detailed one, you don't have to do it again. If you do not, or if you create your own platform or repository, you need to keep this available and up to date, and describe again what sort of data you are using, how it relates to one another, what is the metadata description that you use and why, and if it is tied to anything that exists. Again, fair, if you apply the FAIR principles, you're very okay. And the last one is my personal recommendation: use repositories if possible. There's a number of options. You have in multiple places, there are institutional repositories available, national ones or global. If there is no other option in your area of residence or where you do your research, you can always use Zenodo to upload your data set to. You will get a DOI, so you can cite it, others can reuse it. It's, I would argue, it's a very good practice for anyone to do it. And that is all I have for you today. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to contact me at my email address that you can see right here. Thank you very much.
So, finishing the last presentation for the second session of the International Conference on Delta Project. We would like to hear from you if you have any comments, any questions to the addressing to the speakers of the second session. We would like to hear from you. If you have any comments, questions, from the presentations that we heard in the second session. Otherwise, I think it's time to close the conference, and I would like to thank you all for being here, for participating, of course, in the Delta course, and for attending today's event. Thank you very much again, and you know where we can find us. You have the Delta communication channels, website, and social media, and the DAISY research group of Hellenic Open University, also communication channels. So thank you again very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you very much.